Thank you, Christina, for that very kind introduction. And I just want you to know that I'm really thrilled to be here. It's wonderful to see all of you and to recognize you. You look, my class of '76, I remember you all very well. It was easy to remember you. We look good. It's wonderful to be here and to see all the incredible changes that have been made here, all the progress that has been made. And it's also great to see and to feel the things that have not changed. This college's profound belief in women and in our ambitions and in our abilities, its commitment to excellence and the unique, can't quite define it, but know it when I see it, spirit of Barnard. I want to thank the association for inviting me to share a few thoughts with you this evening about my journey since 1976, about what Barnard did for me, and the wonders that she is still working in my life. And I want to invite you to think about where you are on your journey and to consider what might still be yearning to be born in you. What might still be yearning to be born in you. It's a real gift to have this oasis of time, to think about the young women we were, the still maturing women we are, and the ever wiser women we are becoming. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to reflect on all the things, tangible and intangible, that mark us forever as Barnard women. I was actually an accidental Barnard woman, luckily. I was the first person in my family to graduate from high school. And so when I started applying to colleges in 1971, way back then, I hadn't ever heard of the Seven Sisters. I had certainly not heard of Barnard, even though I lived on 97th Street. My aunt and uncle, with whom I lived, viewed themselves as holding me in trust for my parents who were in Panama, where I was born. They were not educated people, but one thing they knew for sure was that I was not leaving New York City and that cozy little apartment to go to anybody's college anywhere. I still remember the day that my uncle sat me down and he said, "What is the name of that school on 116th Street? That's where you're going." I was a very obedient child. And luckily for me, he had exquisite powers of divination when he made that decision for me. And so I arrived on campus, a obviously sheltered and very shy commuting student in 1972, 39 years ago, as part of that pioneering group of people of color going to college for the first time in not so insignificant numbers. It didn't take me long to begin to understand what it meant to be a Barnard woman and to know that I was becoming one. We were surrounded then, as we are now, in this moment, by a cloud of witnesses, of women who believed in the power and the potential of women. Women who knew their own minds, who were encouraged to listen for and march to their own drummers. Women who saw challenges and problems aplenty and assigned themselves the task of addressing and resolving them. Women who had been brave and radical in their own time. Women like Zora Neale Hurston and Ntozake Shange, they were the ones for me. Hurston, class of '28, I loved her because she was so insistent on being herself. She was so insistent on knowing her own mind and was not about to accept anybody's orthodoxy. And Ntozake Shange was because, class of 1970, she was the bomb. She understood black women's emotional lives, and she was not afraid to share that with the world. She was hot. I was also surrounded by my fellow students who came to campus full of dreams to be doctors and lawyers and writers and activists and artists, to do their part to change the world. It was an electric place, and I was out of 97th Street every day coming up here to be brought alive. It was electric, and the place fit me like a glove. When I was young, I was never quite satisfied with the way the world was. I wasn't quite satisfied with my family. As a freshman, I saw lots of things that were wrong with the world, and I wanted to change them. I wanted to be brave and courageous like Zora and like Ntozake. And this place led me to believe that I could do that. I arrived on campus in the wake of the civil rights, anti-war, and the women's movement. I had been part, and I'm so proud of this, of the Free Angela Davis campaign. Angela, with her fro and her unmitigated bravery, set the standard for me. Although the fires of the movement were dying down on campuses across the country in the early 70s, there were still whiffs of them. There were still whiffs of a world waiting to be born. A bit of that revolutionary longing was still in the air here, and it was still in me. By the 1970s, the mid-1970s though, the voices of radical social change were quieting down. Those who are of my generation may remember that. Affirmative action programs were bringing more and more people of color into the academy and delivering us into the capitalist stream. Life was good, and or so it seemed. Does anyone here remember the movie I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker? The protagonist, you may recall, played by Keenan Ivory Wayans, his community is a mess, and he wants to know what happened. Remember there was a movement supposed to make things better? And he goes to see this black radical named Kalinga, played by the inimitable Clarence Williams III. He said, what happened? What happened to all the revolutionary fervor? Clarence says, yeah, we marched down on the federal building, 500 of us young brothers, full of outrage. And he pauses. He looks up into space and he says, but they were hiring that day. The brothers left with jobs. Well, that was me. By 1976, when I graduated, I went off to law school, still dreaming of striking a blow for social change. But when I left Yale in 1979, off I went into the practice of corporate law, and life was good, or so it seemed. As I reflect on it, I think that I began my journey back to my aspirations to be a more radical me on August 1st, 1981. That was the day I got married. It was also the day that Time Incorporated launched MTV, music television, which along with everybody in the media would do so much to shape the world into which I would bring my children. I had my first child, a daughter, wonderful, Leah, in 1985. And the wonderful Andrew came in 1988. Now, when I decided to leave the practice of law in '87 to spend time with Leah, I had absolutely no intention of making a career of it. A couple of years off at most, I thought, and then right back to work, right back into the stream. But something very interesting happened while I was raising Lee and Andrew. This culture became out and out hostile to children and to childhood. The early 80s marked the beginning of what my friend, the author Susan Lin, calls the corporate takeover of childhood. I refer to the onslaught of marketing to children, freed from regulation by congressional decree. Corporations decided to bypass mothers who, until then, they had considered the gatekeepers for children. Businesses went full throttle, spending billions selling products with marketing slogans like, "Obey your thirst," "Just do it," "Have it your way." They helped create what one marketing executive has called a gotta have it, gimme culture, in which our reigning values are the shallow values of what the sociologist Robert Bellah has called the money world: self-indulgence, instant gratification, and materialism, a radically individualistic, disconnected culture that calls forth the self at worst instead of the self at best. At first, I did my best to just protect my own children from the madness. For example, when our children were young, I didn't let them watch television. But one day, and I thought, I was really protecting them. One day, Leah and I were talking about the meaning of life. This is what you get when you're, go from 97th Street to 116. So we were talking about the meaning of life, and I asked her, because I had been, as I said to someone earlier, I'd met some young people from Mexico, and they had an interesting idea about what life was about. They thought that they were being raised to respect their elders, love their family, and live fruitful lives. And I wondered what an American child, my own child in this case, would say to the question, what are children in the United States being raised to be? She did not bat an eye. She said, to get good grades, get good jobs, and make lots of money. And I thought I was protecting my child. I realized that the world had, in fact, seeped in, and I had to fight back. I didn't have any choice. And that's when I started calling myself this thing called activist mother. Because our cultural understanding of what it means to be human was being hollowed out. Our money world ways of thinking were making money seem more important than almost anything else. They were leading us as Americans to treat ourselves and each other carelessly. They were making it more and more likely that as a society, we would walk down a path that Francis Fukuyama called a post-human future, in which we use new technologies, and this is happening more and more every day, to create designer babies and turn human beings into manufactured products, because we have a better idea of what we can do. And because we're driven by the money world, on the money world's terms, anything goes. Its logic says, go, go, keep going. It has no limits. One of my best friends at Barnard, we were friends here, and we still are friends. She once asked me why I was still at home so many years after my 2-year limit. She said, you have a lot of talent and you are wasting it. You need to figure out, and these were the words she used, why you have put yourself on a shelf all these years. The interesting thing is that my son Andrew had wondered the same thing. One day, he came home and said that he and his friends had been talking, and they were wondering why I would have given up a job that paid so well to stay home with him and his sister. Now, I knew I really wasn't on a shelf. And by the time Andrew asked me that question, I had the answer. Because I was a Barnard woman, because I am a Barnard woman, I knew my own mind. And I had come to believe that my work with my children was as valuable as anything that I could do outside of my home, any other use of my education. And I didn't explain this to Andrew, but what I was actually doing during those years that I was on the shelf was learning about the values of the mother world. I was learning that at the heart of what it means to be human is the deep need to connect with other human beings. I was learning that the work of nurturing a child gives the nurturer a keen awareness of the connectedness of human beings and the sense of empathy and stewardship that flows from that connectedness. I was learning that those of us who mother tend to live out values that are almost the diametrical opposite of the values of the money world. Those values are connectedness, concern for the other, and stewardship. And I call these mother world values, even though people want me to call it something else, they want me to call it parenting, and I know why, because it feels gendered and it feels constricting, but I insist on calling them mother world values because they have been cultivated by mothers throughout all of human history. And now, people are dying from a lack of connectedness in this culture. And people who mother, whether they are male or female or biological mothers or not, these people hold the keys to helping us reconnect with one another, to save our humanity. So, I assigned myself the task of mobilizing advocates for mother world values. That's what I do. That's why I founded the Motherhood Project and its successor, Mothers for a Human Future. And our goal is to equip mothers to be leaders for mother world values to save our humanity. It's downright quixotic. It's quixotic, but it feels so good. I am back to feeling the way that I did when I arrived on this campus nearly 40 years ago. I feel that there is a new world waiting to be born. But actually, there are two worlds waiting to be born, because we are at a crossroads. We can continue to be guided primarily by the values of the money world and keep walking down the road to a future in which human beings become more and more like objects and commodities. Or we can take the road in which people who mother guide us to a more balanced, richer, more ennobling vision of what it means to be a human being. For all of human history, mothers have brought children into this world and done their best, tried their best to make them fit into the cultures that have proved unworthy of their children. This is our last chance to make our culture worthy of our children. To be sure, it is an uphill battle. It's an uphill battle to raise these issues in a world that has so many other problems. I mean, gosh. But I am never going to give this one up. I don't have a choice because I see myself as part of the last generation of mothers who remember a time when our culture was not dominated by the values of the money world. We are the last generation that can help us regain our bearings and rescue our humanity. And time is running out because there's some really smart, really incredibly smart people technologically who are really rushing us down that post-human road. And once we go down there, we won't be able to turn back. So it is with a sense of urgency and passion that I wake up every morning, having fully claimed my role now not as an activist mother, but as a radical mother, a rebel mother, determined to change the direction in which we are going. And where do I get the nerve to think I can do this? A big part of it, ladies and gentlemen, comes from my identity as a Barnard woman. I do this work even when I am tired and want desperately to quit, and I often do. I do it because I am a Barnard woman. Barnard taught us to know our own minds and to trust ourselves, to trust our potential and our power, to not be afraid, to not give up, and to see our self-assigned tasks through. Now, having and raising my children truly radicalized me. That is what helped me find my way to my, as Oprah would say, my most authentic self. That's the challenge for each and every one of us. Some people find their way early in life. For others like me, it takes a while. We each have to make our own way, walk our own path. So my question for you tonight is, where are you on your journey? Have you, as Oprah would ask, found your most authentic self? Is there something still yearning to be born through you? What is the thing that the world needs that only you, your special, unique in all the world, never to be repeated, never been here before, never coming again self, that only you can give? If you have found what you're meant to do, and I suspect that many of you have, I rejoice with you. And if you have not found it, I encourage you, because it is not too late. There is still time. The first thing we have to do is to remember who we are. And then we have to be willing to fully live the lessons that Barnard has taught us. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention. God bless you, and I look forward to talking.